Okay, good evening everyone. We're middle of Siman Yutes, page 254. And once again this week, we'll dedicate our learning to the Yidden in Ukraine.
Still Yidden there?
There's still plenty of Yidden there. Yeah. The brother-in-law is there.
Still there, yeah.
What did he tell you?
Doesn't tell me anything.
Yeah, but you have a phone, you can get through?
Yeah. There are Yidden in Ukraine, there are a lot of Yidden in Ukraine, and by the way, there's the Yidden who ran away, who need help.
Help up.
The Yidden in Russia who need help also. They're not going through easy time, as mentioned I think last week. With all the sanctions that are being put against Russia, the Yidden there who are suffering from that also. Well, the kids there, the Eibishter should continue helping and protecting all the Yidden. The Yehudim Esa'ira of the Simcha of the Sassan of the Yikar.
Ik zeg Shmiti Mashiach.
It's always my name Mashiach.
Shmiti.
Mitzvah Shvius, right?
Mitzvah Shvius, correct.
Yeah, what, sorry?
It's always my name Mashiach. Why it's happening?
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to wait.
Zot Hashem.
I once heard someone said, he was a helfen.
No murder, killing.
Only sorrow should be in your mouth.
When there's a helfen, bizer wird helfen. Either time he's Hashem should help, and until he helps, he should also help. In other words, he should bring Mashiach, and until he brings Mashiach, he should also help. And Eibishter, yeah. The Baruch, things are difficult, but we see the different Yeshuas of the Eibishter in many ways. The Eibishter should continue extending his protection over all Yidden. Amitzshan, a little later on today, we'll talk a little more about Purim, and specifically in relation to what's going on in the world around today. So we're middle of Siman Yutes, and the Rebbe begins asking a question that how is it that the Arizal says that Moshe Rabbeinu, that which was Moshe Rabbeinu, what he was able to be masik, what he was able to grasp, was only in the chitzonius of Chachma, the chitzonius of Bina, and the chitzonius of the Midas as it extends into the lower Midas, which are Netzach Chod Yesod Malchus, and only in Netzach Chod Yesod Malchus there was Moshe Rabbeinu able to understand the Pnimius. And the Alter Rebbe asks, the Arizal, after all, in his teachings, what we have recorded from the Arizal, he talks about these madrigas, which he said Moshe Rabbeinu did not have a grasp in them, the Pnimius. He writes about them. In fact, even higher than Atzilus, much higher than Atzilus. We find the Kisvei Arizal talks about them. So how is it that Moshe Rabbeinu was like Lekam B'Yisrael Eid Navi K'Moshe? No, the Navi like Moshe. That Arizal was able to grasp higher than Moshe Rabbeinu. So as we explained, Alter Rebbe explained last week. Now it means that Moshe Rabbeinu, as well as the other Nevi'im, whatever that they grasped was B'mari Nevuah. B'mari Nevuah means that was revealed to them. They saw it. They didn't see it physically, but they saw it spiritually. It was revealed to them. And their mind's eye was revealed to them. And there's a limit to what the human being can see, can perceive. On the other hand, that which the Arizal grasped from the Mukabalan, the Arizal, that was with the koyach of their Havana, with the koyach of their understanding. And a person can understand much more than a person can see. There's limitations on what a person can see. As we gave examples last week, right? You can we could read all about the outer space and the moon and under the ocean, but we can't. It's not something we can see. The same thing is also obviously Moshe, whatever that is on the Moshe Rabbeinu also knew, but that wasn't the Milo of Moshe. The Milo of Moshe wasn't his knowledge. The Milo was that he was the greatest Navi. A Navi means that he saw what no one else saw. What was the level that Moshe Rabbeinu was able to see? That was the Pnimius of Nihim, Pnimius of Netzach Chod Yesod Malchus of Atzilus. It's not higher than that. And what we're going to do right now today over here is we're going to figure out what does that mean. Still, this is a Chinese to us. That Moshe was able to understand the Pnimius of Nihim, but not Chachma, and not Bina, and not the Midas. Why is it that Dafka, Moshe was able to understand Dafka, the Pnimius of Nihim, which, as by now we understand, that is the apex of what a human can see. That which is shaykh for a human to experience in the Nevuah. The highest possible is the Pnimius of Nihim. Why is that? So to understand that, we need to do a review of the Midas, and this is something we spoke about extensively a few months ago. A few months ago when we learned, I don't remember exactly when, but in Siman Tesvav, right now we're in Siman Yutes, But in Siman Tesvav of Iggeres HaKodesh, for those of you who recall, we had an extensive discussion over there, and the Rebbe extensively elaborated on all the midas. So we're going to need to do a little review of the midas. So once we do a little review of the midas, we'll understand what it means and why it is that Moshe Rabbeinu, the extent of what he was able to perceive in Nevuah, was the pnimius of Nihim. So, as we explained at length, the human being, inside the human being, everything that happens, everything the human being does, is the result of a process. An internal process, an internal spiritual process. And this process begins with Chachma. Chachma, as we explained, Chachma is awareness. Chachma is, talking here, we're speaking about the idea of Re'iyah, of seeing. Chachma is the idea of seeing, experiencing something, becoming aware of something being revealed to you. Once something is revealed to you, once you've experienced something, the next thing that happens in the mind is the processing. That's the bina. Very good. That's the bina. Is the processing. Then after it's processed, then you have you have das, which is
the output,
connection. Right? Das is connection. When you're personally connecting with that, the idea that you became aware of, the idea that you processed, you connect it. And once you connect to the idea, then that leads to midas, that leads to feelings. And the feelings lead to action. However, as you will recall, when we spoke about feelings, there are two levels in feelings. There is the higher midas, which is chesed, gevura, and teferes. And then there are the lower midas, which are netzach, hod, and yesod. Chesed, gevura, and teferes are I like, I don't like. It's my internal feeling.
What is that?
What's going on here? Sounds like a doomsday.
Ruben.
I guess.
Kolo suave.
I have to hear everything what you say.
You'll hear
if
everything.
I don't hear it, I get nervous. What can I tell you? I can't help it.
So, chesed, gevura, teferes, for example, are, okay, I have a feeling, I love my child. That's my chesed. Chesed is ava. Gevura is I fear something. That's chesed, gevura, teferes. Then there's malchus. Malchus is action. But you don't go straight from chesed, gevura, teferes to action. If me loving my son doesn't take me to action, then first there is the lower midas, which are netzach, hod, and yesod. Netzach, hod, and yesod is the internal process that translates my feelings into something practical. Okay, so because I love my son, I'm going to sit and learn with him. Or I'll take him. I'll play with him in the park. That's netzach. Netzach and hod are called are the 2 feet. And in other words, what they do is they take your midah, your feeling, which the feeling is more of an abstract feeling. It's a feeling of closeness, or it could be the other way. For example, if I'm scared of something, so between the fear of something and me actually doing something about it, there is that emotion has to be translated into something which is tangible, and that's Achod Yesod Malchus. So, when I look at someone, when I'm observing someone, so again, there's the whole process, which begins with Chachma. I become aware of something, then I process it, I connect it, I have feelings towards it, my feelings become translated into some sort of action, and then there's the actual action. Now, if I'm observing someone, which parts of that person can I see? What can I see? Can I see the person's Chachma? No. I can't see that person's Chachma. Instead, can I see the person's bina? Can I see the person's processing of it? No. Can I see the person's feeling?
No. Yeah, maybe. Facial expressions.
Okay, that's a manifestation of the feeling, but it's not the feeling itself.
Yeah, no.
Meaning a feeling that you have in your heart. When I'm watching you, I don't know exactly what I can't...
you can't tell me I'm
not
angry or happy or...
Let's hold it another 1 minute. You'll see where I'm going.
Yeah, well, all right, go ahead.
Then that's Achod Yesod. And that is what we say the bechein, or the takeaway. That I can see.
That's action.
That I can see. Even before the action, I could already see the Netzach Hod Yesod is already the spiritual counterpart to the action. That's something that I can see. By way of example, okay? If you see someone If you see someone going home on the Friday afternoon and he has a bouquet of flowers in his hands for Shabbos, and he hands the bouquet of flowers to his wife.
I'm doing it for 48 years.
You're doing it for 48 years.
Baruch Hashem.
Years Hashem, many, many more years. And may have Esrim and then some. So, you could probably, especially if you're a therapist, you can sit down and you can figure out, okay, that's an action. What feeling is that action rooted in? I could probably figure out what that action is also, what that feeling is. What is the processing? What is the chachma? Really, as I mentioned, the job of a therapist is to do a forensic, whatever, to decipher behaviors and figure out where it came from, right? Work backwards. What is the feeling that led to it? There's a whole field of psychology called behavioral therapy. What is behavioral therapy? Behavioral therapy, there's different types of behavioral therapy. One of them, the most popular one is cognitive behavioral therapy, but that's part of the family of therapies called behavioral therapy. Behavioral therapy is that we see a person and their behavior, there's something wrong with their behavior. Maybe they have a eating disorder, maybe they have a sleeping disorder, maybe they have, maybe their behavior is being caused by a narcissistic disorder, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day is, I need to figure out how to change this behavior. How do I change the behavior? The only way to figure out how to change the behavior, you need to be a detective, and you need to figure out where is this behavior rooted in? Because every behavior is rooted in emotions. Okay, and then where is the emotion rooted in? The emotion is rooted in the person's perceptions, in the person's way of thinking, the person's understandings. Which is, by the way, that's cognitive behavioral therapy. The idea of cognitive behavioral therapy is that we fix the emotions through fixing the cognition, fixing the mind, the way the person thinks, the way the person processes things in the head, and that automatically impacts the emotions, and that automatically changes the behaviors. Shalom Aleichem, long time no see.
Yeah, last week I wasn't here.
Okay, so that's a long time.
That's a long time.
Okay, yeah.
We did something very big this week.
Talk about it afterwards. Okay.
Afterwards.
But at the end of the day, this therapist who's doing this analysis, the only thing that they see is the behavior. And you can argue they can see also the Netzach Chod Yesod. They can see Netzach Chod Yesod is the spiritual decision to make that behavior. The feeling, the therapist can understand the feeling. The therapist can maybe try to figure out what the person's going on in the person's head and the person's heart. But that's not something that a person can see. Now you can see. So what we have over here is, but at the end of the day, there's what we call the chitzonius, and this is something we've been talking about at some length. The chitzonius means not the thing itself. The difference between pnimius and chitzonius. Chitzonius is a thing as it is for itself, the reality of it. Chitzonius is the part of it that extends outwards and which can be grasped by another or on another level. In every level, that which descends to the level beneath it is the chitzonius. Right? To give you an example. So you have chachma, right? Chachma is awareness, as we mentioned. What part of chachma enters bina, enters the processing, is only the chitzonius. So let's say, for example, I'm watching the Niagara Falls. I see the Niagara Falls. Then afterwards, I'm busy processing what I saw in my head. If you were a mind reader and you were able to read my thoughts right now, would you get the full experience right now of seeing the Niagara Falls?
Nope.
No.
No.
You don't see it.
Which means that which I saw, my chachma, my awareness, only the chitzonius of it, only a small little part of it, enters the bina, enters my processing, and I process it. But when I'm processing, really, it's only a small part of it. It's the external part of it. It's not the thing itself. Not the thing itself. And then the chitzonius of my bina enters my midas. So at the end of the day, when I am looking at another person, I am getting the chitzonius of the chachma, the chitzonius of the bina, the part of the chachma that enters the bina, the part of the bina that enters the midas. What is the only part of a person that I can see, the pnimius of that person? is the Netzach Yesod Malchus. That is the part of the person which is already extending outwards, extending towards the other person, extending into the world of action, and that is something that I can actually see it for what it is. Interesting that the Alter Rebbe is going to bring over here a line in Kabbalah, which is very interesting, which is that the Nehim of the Elyon, the Netzach Yesod Malchus of the Elyon, becomes the Moichin of the Tachton. In every single world, so the Nehim of that world then becomes the Chabad of the next world. And then the Nehim of that world becomes the Chabad of the next world. Think about it for a second, okay? Now you guys were talking, before we started class, you're talking politics, talking about Biden, talking about Trump, right? Okay, so let's say I'm walking down the street one day and I see that a person with a big Trump sign takes it and puts it into his front lawn.
What?
Puts it into his front lawn, sticks a big Trump sign on his front lawn. And by the way, as mentioned many times, in this class I'm not doing any endorsements or any politics. I'm using this only as a mashal. Use the same mashal with the Biden sign, for example. Okay. So, what am I seeing? I'm seeing the Nehim. That's all I'm seeing. The action of the person. Now I know that the fact that this person is putting a sign over there is because obviously a result of certain feelings that the person has, which is a result of a certain seichel the person has, the person, in other words, the person, certain awarenesses the person has, and the way the person has processed it, and the feelings the person has as a result of it. But I don't see any of that. I'm seeing the sign being stuck into the ground. So right now, I'm watching that, and I start thinking, looking at that. So probably the person has this and this feeling. Probably because the person has this and this opinion. Probably because the person has been exposed to this and this information, right? Meaning I'm backtracking and I'm figuring out the Chachma, the Bina, the Das, the Midas, right? All I can see is the Nehim. That's the only thing I can see. So this person likes Trump. My Chachma became aware of the fact that this person put the sign in. My Bina processed that information. My Bina therefore reached a certain conclusion. So I decided that if that's the case, then this person's a Trump fan. And if that's the case, how do I feel about this person? I'm going to develop my midas. And by the way, if I like that, I'm happy about that. Okay, so that's going to influence my behavior. So I'm going to go become his friend. And maybe I'll go bring him a bottle of wine. If I don't like Trump, then what's going to happen is my awareness and my processing, all of that is going to mean I'm not going to like him. And then next Shabbos, when he walks into shul, I'm going to move away to be far away from him. What just happened over here? His nehim, which is his putting in the sign, that's the nehim of what was going on by him, became my chabad, became my midas, became my awareness, which I processed, which led to my midas and my nehim. Okay? And then that Shabbos in shul, when I walked away from the person, that's my nehim, is walking away from that person. Someone else sees me walking away from that person, notices my nehim, and says,
That's your nehim.
he doesn't have Avos Yisrael. So that person starts developing feelings to me, which leads to nehim. What we have is the nehim of one level becomes the chabad, the moichin, and the beginning of the process of another level. So on every single level, we have always is that the nehim becomes the chabad, the nehim becomes the chabad, and that's talking in the chain of worlds. So we have over there is that the Nehim, the Netzach Yesod Malchus of Atzilus, they become the Chabad of Bria. And that's the ending point of Atzilus is a starting point. But at the end of the day, think about it, the Chabad of the world of Bria. How would you compare that to the Chabad of the world of Atzilus? It's like I'm watching mimes. I'm watching, some people, charades.
What's that mean?
Charades. You know, when people act out something and you're watching and trying to figure out what it means. At the end of the day, the whole world of Bria is based on the Nehim of Atzilus. The world in Bria, they don't see what's going on in the Chachma of Atzilus. They don't see what's going on in the Bria of Atzilus. They don't even, in the Bina of Atzilus. They don't even see what's going on in the Midas of Atzilus. They're just all they can see is the action, what we say, the Ma'aseh B'Poel, the Nafkimina Lahalacha, and that is the starting point. That is the starting point for the Chabad of the world of Bria. Now, back to the world of Atzilus for a second. So we know that the world of Atzilus is the world of Elokus. That's the world where Hashem is, right? Atzilus, the Torah, comes from the world of Atzilus. The Torah starts out where? In Hashem's Chachma. That's where the Torah begins. As we know, it says, Eiraisa, we're going to bump into these words, Eiraisa mechachma nafkas. The Zohar tells us, the Eiraisa comes, the Torah comes, it emerges from Hashem's Chachma.
But where's Hashem's awareness? Chacham means His awareness.
It's a very good question.
There's no.
Very good question. It's an awareness that comes from above Atzilus. Because when, in terms of...
Who's above it? Elokus is everything.
I know, but in Atzilus, there's Elokus already as it is B'Hagbala, in a limited form. Higher than Atzilus, you also have Madrigas, but it's the area stuff, the Blikvul. Just like in yourself, sometimes you can have an awareness that comes from outside of you. You can see something, and sometimes you have an awareness that comes from a deeper part inside, a deeper place inside you. So the awareness comes from a deeper place within Hashem. But ultimately, the Torah, as we know it, begins in Chachma. Conscious Torah of Hashem. But we can't see that. No human being can see that. Why? Because I can't see what's going on inside of you. Yeah.
You say that some people, Sadiqim, have Ruach HaKodesh. Does that give them some extra being tuned in to a person? More than, the way you're describing tonight? Like, they'll tell stories that someone went before a certain tzaddik, and the tzaddik could see that this person had a certain background, or a certain character, or certain mitzvah, certain veros, and makes a comment, I knew you came because you want to do tshuva. And from the way you're describing tonight, how do we put that in the picture?
It's a great question. Maybe one day I'll know and I'll let you know. As of yet, all my attempts at Ruach HaKodesh have not been successful.
Does the Baal Tanya deal with this issue?
Not in Tanya.
All right.
Not in Tanya. Possibly in other places.
All right.
Yeah.
Robert,
Yeah.
while we're talking about Bina, we know that women got Bina Etera. We all know that. So why when we said in Dekot HaShachar Shelo Asani Isha, we know that Isha is Bina Etera. So why the Chachamim that institute the Tefillah put that I know, man has more mitzvot. I know that.
So there's a
But
tree.
she has Bina
That's the
Etera.
answer.
Not all women say that. There's an old.
That's a great question, but it's really,
It's a really
not
a tangent.
relevant to what we're talking about.
I know.
We can talk
Sure,
after class. We can talk about it. It's really going off.
Just going off
As they
the
say,
subject.
avazait, going off on the side. Yeah.
It's a tangent. So as you were saying,
As I was saying.
No, Chabesra.
Don't forget to.
Let's try to put this in somewhat different words. The way you experience yourself, no one can experience you. The way you experience your thoughts, the way you experience your awarenesses, the way you experience your feelings, you can't share with someone your feelings, really. It doesn't work that way. What can someone else see about you? Your actions. That's something which a person sees, your tendencies of how you behave. Okay, that's your Natzachoi Yisoid. How you translate whatever is going on deeper inside you into the world of action, into the world of relationships. That's what people can see. You for yourself. Only you experience yourself. And just as this is true in our world, with ourselves, Allah Chaskama V'Kama, the same is true with Hashem. When Hashem tells Moshe, L'yirani Adam V'Chay, right? L'suchal L'ires Espana, you can't see me for who I am. You can't. The best that you can do
All right.
is Achore. What is Achore? Is see the way that I relate to the world.
I mean, his attributes, the Kodesh Baruch Hu's
What is that? So then let's go back to Torah. Torah is in Hashem's Chachma. Hashem's Chachma, a human being can't relate to. That's Hashem as he is for himself. Hashem is Bina also not. So you have Hashem's, the Chetzonius of Hashem's Chachma enters Hashem's Bina, but that's also beyond what a human being can can arrive at, again, in a way of re'iyah. Very important, we're talking in a way of re'iyah, in a way of nevuah, in a way of Pasha being revealed to the person. The midas also, the higher midas, chesed, gevurah, teferes, this is Hashem's feelings. No, you can't see Hashem's feelings. I don't mean just with your eyes. What can a human being possibly? The highest human being who ever lived, which is Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? Mivchar mina anushi. Right? The most perfect human specimen. What can you see? He had a 100% complete understanding of Hashem's netzach chod yesod, meaning of the way Hashem interacts with the world. What does that mean, the way Hashem interacts with the world? Hashem has, again, going back, there's Hashem's chachma, which is under his awareness. Then there's his bina, the way Hashem kaviyachol processes, and that leads to Hashem's midas. Hashem's midas, right? Chesed, gevurah, teferes, what Hashem. And what does that translate into Hashem's midas? And therefore, I want you to do this. I don't want you to do that. I want you, therefore, to sit in the sukkah, and I don't want you to wear shatnez. That is the nehim. That is the nehim. The nehim of Hashem is based on everything that goes on in Hashem's mind and in Hashem's heart, kaviyachol. What is the bottom line? That's what Moshe was able to get. And in that level, the level of nehim, Moshe was there. He grasped. Sorry, not a grasp. He saw the pnimius of that. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who was Zoichet, Torah was Shetinas and Al Yoda, Torah was given to him, because Moshe Rabbeinu was, his level was that he was able to grasp the essence of Torah which we have. And what is the essence of Torah which we have? Is the translation of the Torah as it is in Hashem's Chachma and Bina into practical terms, into the Torah which we have. And that's why we say Moshe Rabbeinu, what was he able to reach? The pnimius of Nehim, which is the highest human being, because that is the highest level of Hashem as he's relating towards others, as his thoughts and feelings are being translated into something which is practical.
So what is the chitzonis of Nehim would be in this case?
The
What's the distinction
chitzonis of
between-
Nehim is, if you see what I'm doing, okay, the truth is I don't know, but what I'd have to think about what the chitzonis of
You
Nehim.
use the term chitzonis and pnimius.
Right.
I just don't.
So, for example,
I don't grasp
within the act, when a person goes again, when the person puts the Trump sign into his lawn,
What you think, yeah.
is his chachma in that act?
No.
Yeah. But it's hidden. His bina is in the act, but it's hidden. His midas is in the act. You can't see it, but it's all there. It's all in that act. That's what it means that the chitzonius of chachma and bina and the midas are all in the nehim. Chitzonius means not the thing itself, but you might want to say it's bechein. And therefore, because of the chachma, I'm doing this. Because of the bina, I'm doing this. Because of the midas, I'm doing that. So in that thing that I'm doing, hidden there and embedded in there is the chachma and the bina, but that's the chitzonius. It's not the chachma itself. The chachma itself is not in there.
Can't
But the
see it.
impact, you'd say the impact of the chachma is there. The impact of the bina is there. The impact of the midas is there.
What is Moshe
And that
saw?
can't be seen. So the Arizal, he was a therapist, Arizal. Meaning that he was able to, it's not really accurate to say he was a therapist, because it's not shot that he went and he figured this all out with the seichel. It was he was mekabelit. But in concept, what I mean to say is that Arizal was able to go back, just like a therapist can go back. The therapist can't see what you're thinking, but can figure it out. So that Arizal was able to figure out, and also through the koyach of Kabbalah, he knew what chachma was, bina, he knew what kesher was. He knew everything, but it was all knowledge. It wasn't seen.
It's intellect.
In terms of seeing, the highest that even can see is the pnimius of Nehim. That's what Al Rebbe is going to say, and that was the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. Let's do this inside.
Which line?
Zayin Adam, Moshe Rabbeinu.
Let's start again from V'lachein Amru. 8 lines from the bottom of page 254.
200.
2, 3, 4,
Page 254.
8.
8 lines from the bottom. V'lachein Amru, and that's why Chazal tell us, Chacham Adif Min Navi. We did this already last week. That a wise person to a certain degree, has an advantage over a Navi. Why? Because a wise person can understand through his Chachma, so much higher than the levels that are able to descend down here, and to be revealed to Nevi'im, and that which they can actually see in their Nevuah. The only levels that can come down and be revealed to Nevi'im is only Madrigas HaTachtoinis, the lower levels. Sheheim, which they are, Natzachod Yised Malchus. Shehein Heinayir, this time it was Natzachod Yised Malchus, there, the levels that always are descending, Umiskalis, and are revealed, Mahamashpia, Lama Mekabel, from the Mashpia to the Mekabel, Bebechinis Moichin V'chayis, and they become the Moichin, the intellect and the Chayis, for the lower level. Ki Yadua, as is known, L'yedechein, to those who know Kabbalah, Shenehim Shala Elyon, that the Natzachod Yised Malchus of the higher level, Mislapshin B'tachtein Lach Yesai, they enter the lower levels, they give it to the highest, right? And as mentioned, right, and the Lashon brought on other places that the Nehim of the Elyon becomes the Moichin of the Tachter. Shehein Hein, because they are, Natzachod Yised Malchus are Kleya Ashpa, they are the vehicles for the Hashpa. Anytime someone wants to give to someone else, Ve'irada Sachayis, the bringing down of the Chayis Me'elyin Latachtin from the higher level to the lower level. B'chala Ilmas Madrigas, in all the levels, in all the worlds, in all the levels. You know, just thinking that also practically speaking. So I sat here, I would learn this Peritanya, I worked on it, so this went through my entire process of Chachma, Bina, Das, hopefully also my Midas, until it finally gets to the lowest level, which is Malchus. We know Malchus is speech. So Malchus is the lowest level. Malchus is the end of the end of the line, right? You go on the train. The last stop is Malchus. After I understand something and I processed it and I have feelings towards it, then I speak. Now all of you are here sitting and listening to me. My Malchus is becoming your Chachma. Think about that for a second. And you have to now start your whole process. You follow what I'm saying? This we're saying the Natzachod Yisod Malchus. When you have two people and one is giving to the other, there can be two ways. One is you see my action, then my action becomes your chachma, or my dibur, which is when I'm speaking, and that becomes your my end becomes your beginning. That's what it means that the Malchus of Atzilus is the Keser for the world of Bria. Now, me and you, we're pretty much on the same level, right? But what if I'm on a lot higher level than you? And I'm able to understand so much more than you. But I process everything, and then I speak, and I'm giving you over something which is on your level, and then that becomes your chachma, das, right? That's like one world transmitting to another world, but the deeper of the higher world is becoming the meichin of the lower world. So that's the way it always works. And that's how Chod Yisod Malchus of the higher world becomes the chayis and the meichin of the lower worlds. And therefore, Gamkin also, top line of page Kuf Chav Ches, Hein HaMizgalis LeNeviim, that is the level that can be revealed to the Nevi'im. Again, the Netzach Chod Yisod Malchus of Atzilus, the Bechinis His Galus Mamish. That's what can be revealed in a way of literal exposure. In other words, the Navi can actually see it. Within the Netzach Chod Yisod Malchus, within them Melubash Er Habina. Within that is the Bina, is the processing, right? Just like in the words that I'm giving you, with all you hear is my words, but inside it is my Bina. Which in Atzilus, right? What is Bina? Is the understanding of a Lakus of the Eir Insaf. Within the Bina, the Chachma is the external level of the Chachma. You know, Chachma is a level which is higher than Seichel of Havana B'Lakus Baruch. Why? Ki Shem Chachma Meira Al Makar HaSeichel of Havana. Chachma is higher than Seichel. Chachma is awareness, which is higher than intellectual processing. And that's why this says in the Zohar, the Torah emerges from Chachma. What does that mean? And ultimately, where does the Torah begin? Torah begins in Hashem's Chachma. And Hashem's Chachma is higher than Seichel. Awareness is higher than Seichel. That's what you see. That's what Re'iyah and Shmiya. Shmiya is Havana. Shmiya is understanding. And Torah comes from Hashem's Chachma, which is essentially higher than Seichel. Which is why the reasons for mitzvahs were not revealed, and they're higher than our understanding. And even in certain places in the Torah, where it seems that the reason for mitzvah was given to us, that's not the ultimate reason. Rather, within the mitzvah there is there's the pnimius of chachma, the hidden part of chachma, which is higher than seichel v'havana. Same thing as in every single statement that emerged from Hashem's mouth to the Nevi'im, which is written in the Torah, whether it's words of admonishment, and whether it's stories, there's a seichel which is higher. There's something that there's chachma which is higher than which we can understand. So this is because Torah. Yes, so Torah that we have. Moshe Rabbeinu again, he was able to see all the way to the level of that's a chod you said Malchus. But where does the makar of Torah? The makar of Torah is Hashem's chachma. If you remember, we spoke last time. We said the Kabbalah says noivles chachma shalamayla Torah. Torah comes from chachma, but it's the noivles, that which comes down. Because the ikert, the Torah that we have is seichel. But really, within every word of Torah, there's that which is completely seichel, the chachma, which is completely beyond comprehension. Which is something which we see also in the mitzvahs. Why some mitzvahs simply we don't understand them, and there are other mitzvahs even if we do understand them. First of all, even the mitzvahs that we do understand, there's certain elements of them that don't make sense. For example, so why do we eat matzah on Pesach? So we know why we eat matzah on Pesach, but why does it have to be dafka kazayis? Why not a half a kazayis? Why not 2 kazayis? That's something which we don't understand. But there's this idea that ultimately the reasons that we understand of Torah is not the ultimate reasons. Because the ultimate reasons, the tami mitzvahs leinas galu. The ultimate reasons for the mitzvahs were not revealed. Now, Rabbi says, kinira b'chush, as we see clearly in the inyan hakri v'haksiv. One of the areas where we see this is in Torah. We know there's something called kri and ksiv. So sometimes we have in the Torah a word is written one way, but it's read another way. Right? So, for example, in Mitzvah Shem, next week is coming up Purim. So there in the Perek Yud of the Megillah, so it says the word Achashverosh, but the word Achashverosh is written Aleph Ches Shin Reish Shin.
Without vav.
Missing both vavs. Achashverosh, right? And that's not even so bad, just missing letters. And then there's one place in the Torah, in the Megillah, where it says, if you look at the Megillah, what do you read? It says Vayi Bi Amram Elav Yoim. And we read it Ki Amram. By the way, if you read it the way that it is written, you were not Yetz of the Megillah. There are other places in Tanakh, by the way, where you have entire words that aren't there, and we have to read them. In other words, and there are places where there's an entire word which we don't read. It's very interesting. It's constantly creating ksiv. What does that mean? Ki hakri hu lefi havana niglos lanu. That which we read is that which we can grasp, that which we understand. That's why we read it that way. V'haksiv, that which is written is what is, not that which we understand, which is. And haksiv hu l'mayla ma'seichel v'avana. It's higher than seichel. Sheteva zu kiksivasa, because this word, as it is written, ein lo levush bebechinas ha'avana. It makes no sense. Only when we read it in a way which is different than the way that it is written. Yesh levush. Suddenly now there's a levush and seichel. And suddenly now we can understand it. So although that Alter Rebbe is giving here an example of Kri and Ksiv, which is not always in the Torah, it's only in certain places in the Torah. But this is, this teaches us in everything in the Torah. That there's a certain amount, a certain degree of what we can understand. But ultimately, there's so much more that we don't understand. And even when the reasons were given, they're only scraping the surface of the deeper reasons which exist in Hashem's Chachma, which we can't get at. Even Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't able to get it, which is why we say Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't able to see the Pnimis of Chachma. He was only able to reach up to the level of Nehim. And similarly, We know that in Tanakh sometimes there are big letters. So again, if you look in the Megillah, right, in Perek Tes, where the Vatichtoiv, Esther Hamalka, so the Taf of Vatichtoiv is a big Taf. You know, in Shema, you have the Ayin of the word Shema and the Dal of Echad, and they're both big letters. And although Alter Rebbe doesn't talk about it over here, but we know there's also small letters in the Torah.
Vayikra.
Sorry, like the Vayikra, Heintika Parsha, right, our Parsha. Also in the Megillah, you have, right, famously the Taf Shin Zayin and the Saras B'nei Haman, so you have three small letters, the Taf, the Shin, and the Zayin, which Deir Shir Shumas people say corresponds to
The year.
1946.
1947, right, which is when the 10 people were killed by the Nuremberg trial, the 10 sons of Haman, right, were hung.
Nuremberg.
Nuremberg, yeah.
Nuremberg trials.
Yeah. But ultimately, these are all the Ramazim. I'm not saying this is not Chas v'Shalom in any which way to denigrate the Ramazim, which that's a chelik of the Torah as Remes. But to say that that's the reason why the Tav Shin and Zayin is small, no, that's one of the million spin-off reasons. The real reason, the ultimate reason, who knows? Why is it that the why is it the Ayin and the Dalet are bigger in the Shema? Okay, so we know there's the idea of 8, right? And we say the Atam 8, that we are the Eidim of the Eivishter, but at the same time, Al Rebbe is saying over here, ultimately the real reason is, look inside, Shehein Ma'almei Ilah. These big letters are from a higher world, U'mi'iris Misham, Begili Bili Levush Kishar Eisias, and the Eir of Hashem shines in these letters of Adal Levush, as is the case with other letters. So we see over here, again, it's always in Torah, as much as we understand, there's what we don't understand. We have to understand that, even Moshe Rabbeinu, because ultimately Torah Iraisa Chachma Nafkas, and Chachma is higher than the Seichel which is present in the worlds, and therefore the reasons ultimately, and that's why again, even when we understand things generally speaking, there are always details that we have to accept with Kabbalah soil. You know, even the mitzvahs that make a lot of sense. For example, you're not allowed to steal, right? And if you steal, so how much do you have to pay back?
Kefil.
Depends what.
Depends what. Depends what. So if you steal a cat, pay double. If you steal a sheep, pay 5. If it's an ox, it's pay 4. Okay, and why? So good. So the Mishnah Taki gives us reasons also. We have to understand ultimately, these reasons were given after the fact. These are given after. And these reasons are correct, but none of these reasons, in general, when we have in Torah, we have to realize that everything in Torah comes from Hashem's Chachma, which means a place, a level, a sphere, which is utterly beyond human comprehension. Whatever we understand, we're never really grasping the totality of what it is. Yeah.
It said two things. It said, Shivim Panim La Torah. It said, Afoch Ba Va'afoch Ba Kikula Ba. That's exactly what you're saying.
I hear you. There's 70, but really everything's in there. Not only 70, everything's in there. Yeah. The depths of Torah. By the way, the Rebbe says, but the Rebbe interestingly said, it doesn't mean, most people think that it means that anything that you want to know, it's somewhere in Torah. So you have to look and find the place in Torah where the Rebbe says, the Rebbe is on every single idea in Torah. In every single area in Torah, everything is in there. Everything is in every detail. Today we understand that, by the way. With DNA, so many ways in which today with modern science we understand things better.
DNA, right?
DNA. So you think the body has so many things in it, the eyes and the ears and the nose and the heart and the brain and blood vessels, and then comes along DNA and you find out that in your fingernail, everything is there. So the same thing within the DNA of Torah, everything is in every single...
Microcosm.
What?
Microcosm.
Yeah, in every single chelik in Torah. I know that there's someone, I don't remember the details, but I remember definitely hearing the story that someone once asked the Rebbe for advice about when he gives shiurim, or when he gives speeches, any tips. And the Rebbe told him that whenever you give a shiur, you give a speech, make sure that you include in the lecture something that is a little above the comprehension of the people you're talking to. I think Reuven will testify that I do this, right?
Yeah, all the time.
Never give the people that ever saying that feeling that they got it all. Always leave them with that feeling they need. Yes, that there's still more to be learned, more to be grasped. And that, you can argue that that's a pedagogic tool, simply on a, you want to whet people's desire always to learn more and to understand that as much as you know, there's more. But we say, Yeser mamash shekosel kan, Yeser mach karisi yeshkan, more than what I said that there is. But there's also some sort of deeper truth over here. This idea of understanding that whenever you learn, if you learn the whole sugya and you understand it well, and you think you have to know, ultimately, in the words of Dr. Rebbe over here, Taimi mitzvahs, the reasons were not revealed, and even in those places where it was revealed, that's not the ultimate reason, and there's so much more behind it.
Do we find out the ultimate reason in the next world?
So interestingly, the answer is when they say in the next world, in Gan Eden, we have a higher Havana in Torah. But the ultimate learning will be when Mashiach comes. I think we've mentioned this in the past. When we say Torah Chadasha Mi'iti Teitzei, and when Mashiach comes, there will be a new Hashem says Torah Chadasha Mi'iti Teitzei, and the Medrash tells us, and I believe it's in Kehelis Rabbah, the Medrash says that the Torah that we learn in Olam Haza is Hevel compared to the Torah of Mashiach. How do you say Hevel?
Vanity.
Nothing. Yeah, it's nothing. Not.
Hevel havalim.
Yeah, nothing. In other words, the madriga of Torah, which we're going to learn when Mashiach comes, is so much higher. We find this also about mitzvahs. We know that the Sifri says, and Rashi brings down that the mitzvahs that we're doing right now are hatzivi lechot tziyunim. They're only like tziyunim. They're only like
Practice?
practice. Yeah, for Mashiach comes. Because when Mashiach comes, then we say v'sham nasel ufanacha. When Mashiach comes, then we do mitzvahs, then we'll have the ultimate mitzvahs in Eretz Yisrael. But the same thing is regarding Torah. And what is the ultimate difference in the Torah that we're learning today and the ultimate when Mashiach comes, which is very relevant to what we're learning about over here. So it's brought down in Chassidus. The difference is that the Torah that we're learning now is in a way of Shmiya, in a way of Havana Vasaga, we understand. When Mashiach comes, the Torah is going to learn Torah. Mashiach's going to teach us in a way of Re'iyah. He's going to show us. And that's a whole different ballpark. You can learn about something for 50 years, but it's all in your head. When Mashiach comes, we're going to see everything. We're going to see. And that's why also it's brought down that Mashiach comes, that he's going to teach Torah to Moshe Rabbeinu and to the others, and also to the Anashim Shutim, to the simple people. How is that possible? Think about that. Imagine today a person sitting in a classroom, and who is the class? So in one chair you have Albert Einstein, and the other chair you have a 4-year-old. Can you teach both of them together? And the answer is, when you're teaching in a way of Havana, Vasag, in a way of understanding, then Taka, it's impossible. You can't teach Einstein and the 4-year-old kid together. But if both Einstein and the 4-year-old kid are standing in front of Niagara Falls, they're both singing the same Niagara Falls. That's your that's it. And when Mashiach comes, because the Limud HaTorah is going to be a way of the Iyah, Mashiach's going to be able to teach everyone together. Because no matter how great the Havana Vasaga, the understanding that someone has on Torah, Mashiach's going to introduce them to the level of the Iyah.
What, we'll have WhatsApp?
Will Mashiach have WhatsApp? What's the question?
How we can teach millions of new people in one shot?
Of course they'll have WhatsApp. Why was WhatsApp created?
No Mashiach.
This is a basic idea. Everything that was created for Kedusha.
It's mean we mamash.
Unless it's Aser, unless it's Gimel, if the Torah, Shulchan Aruch says it's Aser, that means that we can't use it. But if it's Mutter, I'm not talking about Mutter, but today there are certain people say you can't use it because that's a Siyag. That doesn't mean it's essentially Aser. That means it's, they're making different, what's what I'm looking for, different fences around Torah, which is valid. Be'etzem, no one's going to argue that that you look in this Siman Shulchan Aruch, that WhatsApp Be'etzem is Aser. And what's it created for? It's created to spread Torah and mitzvahs and Yiddishkeit and obviously.
And you see it's being done already.
Yeah, and
You know, this year is being broadcast and people can tune in over the whole world.
which is why broadcasting was created.
Yeah.
No, you're laughing. That's why.
Chavetz Chaim said that.
The what?
That technology, you know, I think he said technology was made, you know, for the purpose of the Torah,
Sure.
to spread it around.
The Rebbe speaks about this idea. You know, when today we talk about the internet and the evils of the internet. Back in the day, we're talking about the 70s, the 80s. So what was the evil that was then?
Television.
Television and radio. Right? So Tanya was broadcast on the radio. They used to have a shir every Matzah Shabbos. And there were, yes, Rabbi Weinberg, all of Shalom. So the people had complaints. The radio was doch evil and klippa. So they were brought on the Medrash that says that the world wasn't really good enough for gold.
What?
The world wasn't good enough for gold. So why did Hashem create gold for the Beis HaMikdash? They state.
There's something here, yeah.
Look, for the first 2,600 years of the world's creation, what was gold used for? Sorry?
About the Zorah?
By the Zara. And then after Hashem gives the Yidden the Torah, they go, what do they do with their gold? The first thing?
Egel.
Make the Egel. Hashem forgives them for the Egel, and what do they do to build the Mishkan? You think that Hashem should tell the Yidden, and I don't want a drop of gold in this Mishkan.
Bring it out of it.
No. Bring the gold, and not only bring the gold. That's why it was created. It was abused until now. It was created for, technology was created for that. The fact that certain people abuse what the Abishah created, in the words of the Medrash, the Abishah should destroy his world because of the idiots. It was created for. Now imagine a person goes and buys a painting. A Rembrandt, okay, pays $100,000. Comes home and tells his wife, oh, look what I got for you. I got you a cutting board. We'll put it on the counter, and there you have a cutting board. Someone who takes technology and uses it for something which is Hepech HaTorah is taking a Rembrandt and using it as a cutting board. Abusing it and misusing it. Anyways, that's pretty good to the Sinyan. I don't know how that would also a little off in Zeit, but I want to talk a little about Purim. And there's an idea about Purim, I have a feeling we probably spoke about it in previous years, an idea that the Rebbe Pachsachin on Purim, many times Rebbe spoke about this. We know that the Gemara says, Megillah, the Gemara says that they asked Rabbi Akiva, why is that the Yidden in that generation were deserving of Kloya, right? Of annihilation. So Silberberg answered, Shenenu Misudasan, excuse me, Shalei Rasha, that they enjoyed the Suda of that Rasha. Okay, then the Gemara continues and says, okay, that was the people in Shushan, how about the people of the rest of the world? The Gemara says that because Shishtachvu Latzalim, because they bowed down to the Tzelem. Now, it's a very interesting thing that we have over here. All the Yidden should be deserving of being killed because they went to the Suda of HaKodesh. And even when the Gemara asked them, the Gemara says, okay, based on that, I understand why all the Yidden in Shushan should be killed. But why is the rest of the world? But the people in Shushan, that's a satisfactory answer. What's the problem with going to the meal of HaKodesh? So most people understand it, that the problem was that it was treif.
With what?
That it was treif.
Right.
So first of all, even if it's treif, it's not a chi of misa. There's no chi of misa for
Just
eating
a lot.
treif. What?
It's a lot. Malchus.
It's a lav, right? It's malchus. Number two, we know that the Medrash tells us that there was kosher food by Achashverosh's meal. Lasis Gersein Ish Havish. Glat kosher and Chol Yisrael, right? And also, we have over here Gzeira LaHashmid, Larig LaAbed, right? Anoshim, Noshim Vataf. If it was because of eating treif, why would the kids be punished? What's going on? Something, there's a missing ingredient over here. And lastly, and here's also going to be the key to the beer, to the explanation. Why does it say Shenehenu Misudasi Shalei Rasha? It should say Sha'achlu Misudasi Shalei Rasha. If the problem is that they ate treif, then it should say that the problem is that they ate from the Suda.
They ate from the Suda.
What do you mean Shenehenu Misudasi Shalei Rasha? So the Rebbe points to a Medrash, where the Medrash says, it's actually interesting Medrash, which says Adrayanus.
Who's Adrianus?
Hadrian.
Adrian. Oh.
Later on, we call Adrianus Chik Tamaya, Yimach Shemoy. He was the one who had Rabbi Akiva killed, and he was terrible. But that was later on in his career. At the beginning of his career, he wasn't bad to the Yidden. In fact, he was friends with one of the Tanoim, whose name was Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanani. And famously, the Gemara, the Medrash recounts many different conversations that Adrianus had with Rabbi Yeshua. Okay, it's a shiloh. What happened to him? At a certain point in time, he went bad, and he became a Ritzeach Mamish, and he decided to eradicate Yiddishkeit. The question is, the historians don't know: is it because of the Bar Kokhba rebellion that turned him against the Klal Yisrael, or did he turn against Klal Yisrael and that caused the Bar Kokhba rebellion? But around the time Bar Kokhba rebellion, either shortly before or shortly after, he became a rabbi at the summit. But before then, there's a conversation that he had with Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya. And Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, he was a Talmud of Rabbi Yechon Zake, one of the 5 Talmidim mentioned in the Pirkei Avos. And he tells him, wow, take a look at this. How great is the sheep that is surrounded by 70 wolves and it still survives. Now, obviously, this was a metaphor. He's talking about the Yidden Klal Yisrael, which we are a sheep. We're surrounded by the 70 wolves and we survive. So he was extolling and praising the greatness of Klal Yisrael. And Rabbi Yeshua answered him and says, no. He says, Gadol Haraya. Look how great the shepherd is of the sheep. Well, even though there are 70 wolves, he guards them against he guards them and the sheep remains safe. And this tells us the natural state of things. The natural state of things is that we, Klal Yisrael, as a sheep, and we are surrounded by 70 wolves. And as we know, wolves like to eat sheep. And there is no greater miracle than the fact that here we are, and Am Yisrael is Chai v'Kayam, despite the fact that B'chol der v'der emdim aleinu l'chaliseinu in every single generation, and that is only because of our shepherd. Arguably, that's the greatest miracle that there is. We can talk about all the miracles that there is. The fact that we still exist after 2,000 years in Galus is the greatest miracle that there is, and it's definitely due to Araya. However, as we know, something we've spoken about many times, that any protection, anything that we get from Hashem, comes bisarusa delatata, comes through our avodah. What is our avodah that elicits the protection that we get from Hashem? It's a corresponding avodah, and that is the avodah b'tachon. Which means when we recognize that Hashem is our Reya, and we rely on Him, and we have emunah and b'tachon in Him, then Hashem is there for us. What happens, however, if we turn to Hashem and say, Rebbeinu Shalom, you know, we're good. We're politically connected, and we have money, and you know what? You can take a vacation. You don't have to watch us anymore. We have connections, we have political connections. As the Yidden said in times of Esther, Achis Lona bebeis HaMelech, we have a sister who's a queen. We're good, Eibishter, we don't need you anymore. And what does the Eibishter answer to tell us? He says, you know what? Okay.
Hester Punim?
What?
The Hester Punim?
It sounds like a plan. You know what? No problem. I'll go on a little vacation, and let me know how it works out for you.
You fend for yourself.
Yeah, and not that Hashem is going to punish us. The moment that Hashem removes, so to say, his hashgacha, what happens is
You're exposed.
there are 70 wolves waiting to devour us. That's the natural order of things. It's not a punishment.
It's a consequence.
It's a consequence. It's not that Hashem punishing and saying you're going to be killed.
Why is there 70 wolves to begin with?
There is that's the Eibush that I could put in place. So then you have over here, you have the story of Purim. What happens is you have this new king, and this new king, he becomes a king and he invites everyone over to the palace for a party. And guess who's invited also? The Yidden are invited. And they're like, whew, look at that. The king likes us. We're invited to the party. They went to the party. And the issue isn't that they ate treif. Whether or not they ate treif is kosher. You're like, Eibishter, take a look. Take a look at that. The king likes us. We're safe. We're secure. We don't need you. Hashem says, okay. But say that.
Wait and see.
You know, the biggest punishment that Hashem gives us is giving us what we ask for, right? Like the miracle. We don't want to go into land. What does Hashem say? Okay. We'll go into land, right? Doesn't say, you don't need me, I'm fine, I'm good. I'll be on standby. Whenever you decide that you need me again, let me know. What happens automatically? We have Haman comes, and that's the automatic. When the Roya is on vacation, automatic consequence. And that's why when Mordechai hears about the Gzeira, so what does he do? You think, Mordechai, by the way, he's a Yesher B'Shar HaMelech. Mordechai was
Minister.
he's a minister. And by the way, he saved the king's life.
Sure.
He had a favor.
Victim
What?
Big is Harish.
Yeah, he saved the king's life. And he has Esther as the queen. you'd think that Mordechai would say, I got this handled. This is good. That's fine. I'm not worried about this stupid Haman guy. What?
We have it made.
We're going to do a Shtadlanus. We're going to do Shtadlanus. We got me. We got Esther. Maybe we'll pay off Charvaina. We'll figure this out. No. He gathers 22,000 children.
Who?
And Mordechai gathers 22,000 children. And they start davening. And Esther says, Sumu alai. That's it. We're going to fast for 3 days. They realized the problem wasn't that they didn't have enough connections. That wasn't the problem. That was the problem. The problem was that they were relying on their connections.
They forgot to make
That's what got them into the trouble in the first place. And now, do you have to make a keli b'derech hatava to be saved by Hashem? Absolutely. That's why at the end of the 3 days, after 72 hours of fasting, when you realize Esther must have looked like a total shmata after 72 hours of fasting.
And she went to the king after that.
What?
She went
For
to
70 hours, and she goes to the king. And why?
and she couldn't stand on her feet.
If she was trying to go b'derech hatava,
Not ever.
then no, then you don't fast for 70 hours before you go to the king. But she realized that going to the king was only a lavush. Teva is only a lavush. Teva is only a lavush for Hashem's bracha. The bracha of Hashem comes in what you do. You have to make a lavush. You have to go work. You have to do what you have to do. You have to make a keli. That's not where the bracha comes from. And the Sikha there gives an example. He says, imagine a person who wants money. So what does he do? He's busy sewing for himself wallets a whole day. He figures I have a lot of wallets. That's the person who's busy doing a lot of work without. No, that's the wallet. That's the lavush. That's the keli. But where's the money coming from? The money's from Hashem. And once the Yidden realized that, that's when the Yeshua came, and the Yeshua came b'derech hateva, unlike any other Yom Tov, to show us that teva is only a keli to Hashem's Yeshua. And this is the story of Purim. The story of Purim is the Yidden forgetting where, forgetting who watches us and who guards us, and putting their trust in teva. And the Yeshua came when the Yidden got their head straight. And as we know, the Baal Shem Tov tells us, HaKodesh HaMegillah LaMafreya LaYatza, which means that if you read the Megillah, literally means you read it backwards. You weren't Yitzhak. But the Baal Shem Tov says that means you read the Megillah as if it's a story that happened a long time ago, you weren't Yitzhak. You have to realize that this is and every single time. So today also, as we started off class talking about the Yidden today in Ukraine, they're in a difficult situation. And sometimes we forget who's the boss. Sometimes we forget how the bracha comes and how the Yeshua comes. So yeah, we have to make a keli b'derech hatava, and yeah, we have to also obviously give tzedakah, and we have to see what we can to help Yidden, etc., etc. But ultimately, you have to realize there's a raya, there's a shepherd, and ultimately the brachas comes when we have our betachin in Him, and we turn to Hashem, we daven, and to realize that's where the Yeshua comes from, and don't ever get lost in the tiftuch b'nedivim, and it's Putin, and it's this guy, and Biden. It's not Putin, it's not Biden, it's from garnish, it's the Eibishter. And with Putin, without Putin, with Biden, without Biden, the answer is not any of them, the answer is the Eibishter. And we've been talking, sorry?
Lev melachim b'yad
Lev
Hashem.
melachim b'yad Hashem. You have Achashverosh, right? It was the biggest anti-Semite that there was. And the Yeshua came through him. Apesha Asar, Apesha Yiter, right? Yeshua came through him. The Yeshua can come through Putin. The Yeshua can come through anyone, because it's not about them. It's about the Eibishter. So we have to do our shtadlanos whenever we can to help save Yidden. But ultimately we have to realize that's the Eibishter. And when we realize that, and we put our trust where it's supposed to be, and we talk, we'll have a replay of the story of Purim once again. Mordechai Yasam Lefnei HaMelech, V'Shmalchus Tchelas V'Chur, L'Yehuda Me'Se'era, Shada B'Karev Mamish now.